This is your one and only spoiler warning for the rest of this video, because what goes down in this week's episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans is frankly pretty damn shocking, which is kind of par the course for the series. I mean, unexpected character deaths seem to come out of nowhere. I just did not expect that this week's episode we would see the death of Orga, the leader of Tekkadan. I'm still trying to process all of this. I mean, throughout the entire episode, they were just throwing death flags into the sky constantly. I was fully convinced that Atra and Kudelia were going to be killed in this episode, which would have made things all the more tragic. However, they ended up killing Orga in this week's episode when he was trying to protect his comrades when these frickin' assassins just come up out of nowhere at Admos Company and decide to blast a couple of caps right into his back. Orga's not a superhuman. He's not going to survive this. And man, it sucks to see this character go without him even really having like a major mobile suit battle or even having like a true final moment with the other members of Tekkadan. There was one scene in this episode that made it painfully clear that Orga was going to die, and that's when Mikazuki gave him that gun that he used when he was a child. And of course he asked Orga to give it back to him, promising to make that a thing. That was pretty much the confirmation right there that Orga was going to be killed. I just didn't have a feeling that it was going to be in this episode. Very much like the death of Laughter, this one just sort of comes out of nowhere. They just assault you with this one, especially because it all happens at the very end of the episode. And unlike an actual mobile suit battle, it tends to be a little more shocking for how realistic it is. I mean, he gets shot like a good, I'd say 4-6 times, and you can see that there's multiple wounds on his back. He's completely bleeding out, and he just collapses right there on the street. I will say, though, that I do love the symbolism of his hand on the ground, his finger still pointing, and his blood actually leaving this trail, which is still continuously going forward, as if to say that even though Orga is dead physically, his spiritual form is still continuing to move forward with Tekkadan. It's a hard moment to watch, especially because you can just feel the pain on Chad and Ryde's faces. I mean, Ryde is the one who gets protected by Orga when he gets attacked by those assassins at the end of the episode, and you can just see the absolute devastation from both of these characters. Chad gets shot in the shoulder. The minute I start to see Atra crying, it's frankly one of the saddest things I've seen from the series, and almost as if he's like some sort of weird freaking Jedi. Mikazuki realizes that something is wrong and that something bad has happened to Orga. It's a really heavy moment, and ultimately I think what's going to define this episode right here. It's also disappointing because we never got to see that mysterious white mobile suit, which apparently was going to belong to Orga. The good news is, if you did want to see that, it looks like it is definitely going to make an appearance in the next episode. And I have to say, I like the design of it. It is highly reminiscent of the Gundam unicorn in its very first form, but there's nothing wrong with that. It looks really damn cool. The rest of the episode is dedicated to Tekkadan trying to escape from Mars, and they're going to go about this in a number of different ways. He's going to meet up with Kudelia and Atra, and they're going to try to make their way to Earth so they can meet up with Mr. Makanai, wipe the slate clean, and everything is going to be pretty hunky-dory. The problem is, Gallarhorn is freaking everywhere. They basically have completely circled the planet, and it's going to be really tough for them to make an escape. Another option for Tekkadan is they get to escape through these underground tunnels, which have been completely blocked off, and they're trying to dig them out so that they can eventually escape to the other side of the planet and hopefully get away from Gallarhorn's clutches. And then, of course, there's McGillis Farid, a character who continues to still just confuse the hell out of me. I really don't know what his ulterior motive is at this point. Maybe he really doesn't have one. Maybe he genuinely does want to help out Tekkadan, because he basically creates an opening for Orga, Kudelia, Atra, and the rest of them to escape to Admos Company. This allows all of Orga's plans to basically go off without a hitch, because they're able to go through, meet up with Kudelia, and everything should be fine. And I have to say, the scene where he's fighting against those Gallarhorn mobile suits was satisfying as hell, especially when he took down Eok, who is not dead yet. He's not dead yet. Orga is dead. But freaking Eok still manages to survive in this episode, although it was satisfying as hell when he decided to take him out by slamming his swords right into his cockpit. It was also basically a political move by Eok as well. He had to make it seem as if they were being attacked first in order for them to have some sort of legality in being able to take down the Gundam Bale. Following this is a great scene with McGillis piloting the Gundam Bale and just wailing on some Gallarhorn mobile suits, basically allowing himself to become a member of the Wolf Pack along with Mikazuki. That's this like little conversation he has with them in this episode, mentioning that of course that he's kind of like a wolf, but wolves go in packs together, and he's sort of happy to be by his side. Like I've said in many ways, McGillis is very similar to Mikazuki. He just is sort of like a combination of Orga and Mikazuki at the same time, except that he's killed almost every single bit of his personality. That's honestly what makes him so damn dangerous, and it's going to lead to a big epic confrontation in next week's episode, where I have a feeling both him and Galio are going to have one final duel, which leads me to believe that apparently McGillis isn't going to have any sort of weird plan to trick Tekkadan and take them down. He genuinely seemed to want to help them in this episode, despite the fact that he's basically doing it for his very own motives, but it continues to make him a very fun and complex character. Really, though, this episode is all about the death of Orga. Simple as that. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans? This episode was like a hit to the heart, man. Like, I knew that there was a good chance, like, that Orga was gonna die. Same thing for, like, Mikazuki and pretty much most of the Tekkadan crew. I always had a feeling the series was gonna end in some extreme tragedy, but the series does a really great job of basically building up a death, making you think how it's going to happen, followed by a scene of our favorite characters getting riddled with bullets. It's shocking. It's different from some of the stuff that I've seen from the other Gundam anime. If this were any other Gundam anime, Orga would have gotten in his mobile suit, he would have gone up against Gallarhorn, and he would have gone out in the blaze of glory, and it would have been effective. But I don't think it would have been effective as it was here. It just felt more real, and that's one of the biggest strengths of Iron-Blooded Orphans. I can only imagine the emotions that are going through people's heads today. I just, shocking deaths are not like a big thing for Gundam, but damn, Iron-Blooded Orphans does it so well. They do it so perfectly every single time, although they do have some of the strongest death flags that I've seen from the entire series. And even with everything else that went on in this episode, it's really those, like, last 2 minutes that are constantly flashing in my head. Those are the images that are going to stick with me most from this episode. Not even the cool mobile suit action. Like, it's that scene where Orga is assassinated. It's so sad, and the fact that Mikazuki isn't there to witness it either just makes it all the more depressing. And you can only imagine the absolute rage that he's going to bring upon Gallarhorn in the next couple of episodes. Which, of course, again, leads me to believe that Mikazuki's probably not going to make it out of this. He's probably the one who's going to stay behind the most to make sure that all of his comrades can actually escape. Speaking of comrades, isn't it pretty cool that Takaki actually makes a return in this episode? He's working for Mr. Makanai, and he's doing everything in his power to actually help out the team. Unfortunately, things don't really go so well at the end of the episode. On the technical side of things, just like the rest of the series, it looked really solid. There were some fantastic moments. The death of Orga was handled well. I loved the lighting and the symbolism of his blood reaching out as it's continually moving forward. I loved the Gundam Bale scene. It was surprisingly fluid. I wish it were a little bit longer, but I'll be damned if it wasn't satisfying. And even the scene with him taking down Eok. Frankly, my friends, this was a good episode, and I honestly can't wait to see how Tekkadan's going to get out of this. I don't see it ending well for them, but if they do manage to survive, I can't wait to see how it's going to happen, and you can bet your ass that I'll be checking that out next week as soon as it is released, because we're only a couple episodes away from the finale of Iron-Blooded Orphans, and I can't wait to see how it's going to wrap up, which is ultimately one of the most refreshing Gundam anime I've seen in years. So, I loved this episode. I thought it was a little slow in the first half, and some of the death flags were a little too obvious, but it still managed to have a lot of impact at the end. I'm going to give this episode right here a solid 4 out of 5. Check it out, Gundam fans. If any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. How did you feel about the death of Orga Itsuka, the leader of Tekkadan? Do you think there's a small chance that he might actually survive? What do you hope to see from the big finale of the series? Who will live? Who will die? What do you want to see from the finale of Iron-Blooded Orphans? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Gundam anime related. Please leave me a comment or two. I'd love to chat with you guys about the episode. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I will see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.